Katerina Koneva had lived with her parents in Hammersmith for approximately 1 year. The family had moved to England from Macedonia.
Her parents were here as students. Both children had settled well into local schools, and, as Dad is painfully aware, Katerina was an inspiration to her younger brother.
You didn't have your tea done.
Good luck.
Every day, Truce took Katerina the first part of the journey to her school.
We gone on bike, on bus stop, and just was coming. I said, "You're lucky, you're not going to wait a long time today." It was just normal morning.
Katerina was a gifted pupil. In there she'd picked up perfect English, was coming top in class, and the very day she died, she was asked to stay back after school for a few minutes to collect a commendation.
On the way home, Katerina walked with a friend most of the way back, discussing who had the most homework to do. And as they waved goodbye, Katerina walked about 100-200 yards on her own.
Meanwhile, back near home in Hammersmith, another schoolgirl was walking home.
The dog barked, and I walked to the window thinking it was my daughter coming in from school, but it wasn't. It's then I saw this man walking along this way towards me. It was strange the way he was looking at her. It wasn't just a casual glance, it was very intense, sort of almost studying the girl. I just felt that this man was going to stop and turn, which he did.
Talk to me about it. I'll see you then.
Okay, bye.
Katerina walked the last few hundred yards on her own.
At home, usually one of her parents would be at home to greet her, but that day, her father had stayed behind at college for an extra 15 minutes. And as he arrived home on his bicycle and pulled up outside the front door, he noticed that the door was wide open. He ran inside thinking that there must be a burglary and someone in there. As he ran upstairs trying all the doors, one of the bedroom doors was locked or shut and he could not get inside. He tried with all of his might, but he couldn't open the door. He tried to look under the door, but he couldn't see what was happening.
I couldn't properly think, but just my mind told me it's burglar.
The burglar, as he seemed to be, astonished someone in a house opposite who saw him clamber out of the first floor window.
On the other side of the road, a neighbour was looking out of his window at exactly the same time that the man that was in that room was trying to escape with a bag out of the first floor window and out onto the ground. Katerina's father must have scared him off, but who was this assailant? Her father ran downstairs after the man, but he was threatened with a knife.
What were you doing in my house?
You don't have time just to think and to realize what to do. But after that, I still decide to run after him.
He's got a knife! He's got a knife! Phone the police! That guy was in my house! Where? Leafley Road! Phone the police!
He shouted at all of the neighbours to call the police. He was frantic as he chased this man around the estate.
Realising the chase was done, Truce made his way back to his flat. Meanwhile, Truce and police officers had broken down the sitting room door and found Katerina strangled. They'd tried mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, but she couldn't be revived.
It's difficult to look on her picture because you can't take it what happened. You expect any moment to come in the room and to sit with her, to talk with her. I miss her with everything. She was that energy what gave me to be alive. I'm waiting for her to come back. I will never believe what happened.
Once he got in the car, then the face changed. Then he had this frenzied look.
Don't let him drive!
I then went to get the keys with my left hand. He then produced a knife.
The man, meanwhile, drove only a quarter of a mile or so and abandoned the car in a bus stop on Shepherd's Bush Road. Everyone remembers him clutching a bag as he boarded a 2:20 bus heading for Wandsworth via Hammersmith.
80.
He had what's described as a foreign accent, and the driver saw blood on his cheek and stains on his shirt. The man got off the 2:20 when it reached Hammersmith bus station at roughly 10 to 5. The date again, Thursday the 22nd of May. Did you see a man with blood on his face and clutching a dark-coloured bag?
Shortly after the murder, Scotland Yard announced a £20,000 reward for any information that may lead to the capture of Katerina's killer. And after examining the crime scene, they found hairs and fingerprints belonging to an unidentified assailant, but were unable to connect them to a killer. And Crime Watch UK did a reconstruction on her murder.
Do you yet know what the motive is? You haven't revealed this yet.
No, we've certainly explored a number of motives, but it would appear now that this killing was sexually motivated, and whilst Katerina wasn't sexually assaulted, the strangulation was particularly vicious. She was strangled twice, both manually and with a ligature, that the motivation was strangulation, and he gained some sexual satisfaction from that act alone. It's difficult. We would certainly say he's probably someone who's living alone, would perhaps appear odd to people, someone who has difficulty in forming relationships with women, is aggressive towards them.
And physically, he looked very, very much like the actor we had there.
The actor there is particularly good. We got a lot of witnesses, we have the video fit, and the artist's impression, a man who's very short, no more than 5'4", possibly 5'3", stocky build, a foreign appearance but may not be foreign, a tan complexion, 45 to 50 years old, with a balding head and hair at the back and the sides which was black but going grey. Very distinctive if all those factors are put together.
Now, you don't know where he was heading for. He was in a panic. He tried to get a bus one way, eventually got a bus south, and you don't know once he got to Hammersmith bus station where he went. So he could go north, south, east, west,
He
in and out of London.
Absolutely. We're not convinced where he is, but we feel he may be a local or within the London area. He clearly would have perhaps lived in the area or worked in the area previously, or still does.
As police searched for the suspect, no crimes were committed between June 1997 and the arrest in 2002, and a man had been arrested as the prime suspect in the disappearances of two women, both of whom were in Ealing. The first of the two cases involved a 19-year-old university student of West London. Her name was Elizabeth Chow. Now, she vanished in April 1999.
Elizabeth Chow, seen on CCTV in Ealing in West London in April last year.
Elizabeth Chow disappeared on the 16th of April 1999. She'd left the Thames Valley University and in fact was walking home on the Uxbridge Road in Ealing. The last sighting actually was on the CCTV that you've mentioned at 18 minutes past 6 p.m. on that evening. She had less than half a mile to walk from there to reach her home, but she never reached there.
So we're here tonight to appeal to the public, their help. We desperately need to know what happened to Elizabeth. I strongly believe that there's somebody out there that knows something. I'm pleading for them to come forward.
The second case was of a 27-year-old Lola Shenkoya, who disappeared several months later while walking home from her workplace.
Lola Shenkoya was last seen walking towards the tube station, also in Ealing, in January this year. She was 27. Police are now treating both these disappearances as murder. Alan, what do you think happened to these two young women?
Lola and Elizabeth have disappeared in very close proximity to each other. This is either a complete coincidence or they may have fallen victim to the same attacker or attackers. I believe that they've both been abducted and murdered. She was travelling on an E2 bus that she'd caught at Northfield's tube station, and she was just getting off opposite Ealing Broadway tube station. The bus driver distinctly remembers Lola on the bus and getting off there because she in fact wished him a Happy New Year, and she was in fact the only person that had done so that day.
In 2002, a man named, now this is difficult for me to say because I can't pronounce his name, but this is his name, ANDRZEJ Kowski lured a 21-year-old Korean student to his apartment. When she entered, he began choking and then RAPing her. So this time, however, the victim escaped and later told the authorities about her attacker. And this ANDRZEJ, I'm going to call him Andre because it's easier for me to say, ANDRZEJ was quickly located, arrested and sentenced to 9 years in prison for the RAPE of her. Although since there were rumours that apparently Levi Belfield, who we've covered in a previous story, actually admitted to this crime years later. But while in prison, ANDRZEJ's DNA had been uploaded into the police's database to check if he could be linked to any other unsolved crimes. And as a result, both his DNA and fingerprints were found to be a positive match with the ones found on the cardigan worn by Katerina Koneva. Following this revelation, this caused a media frenzy, prompting a further investigation into the criminal's past. The English authorities initiated interviews with him, and during which he confessed that he was evading the Polish police due to charges of RAPE back home. So let's look at this ANDRZEJ Kowski. Who was he? Well, he was born on the 29th of March 1956 in Warsaw, Poland. His father was a respected builder who worked on several construction sites while his mother was a homemaker. When he was young, the family moved. His father was offered a job in Mława in Poland. His father was offered an apartment in the city. While his parents were regarded as decent, likeable people, Andrzej was considered a nervous, troublesome child who constantly had problems at school and had a difficulty conversing with his peers. At the age of 2, he was sent off to an orphanage because his mother and father and maternal grandmother were in prison. To boot, his grandfather was locked up in state psychiatric hospital for unspecified sexual offences. And when his mother was released, she did reclaim her son, divorced her husband and remarried a cement mason. The family settled in Poland in another area of the city, in the Polish lowlands 80 miles north of Warsaw. Young Andrzej was viewed as a mama's boy, and when other children teased him, he reacted with a ferocity that seemed out of proportion to the insult. He was a small child with mighty fists. During fights, he would throttle his foes. He also developed a habit of ogling pretty girls with a frightening glint in his eye, as though in a trance. His mother expressed concern that her son seemed unable to recall these episodes of fighting or inappropriate staring. Andrzej also began to steal as a teen, and at 13 he was packed away to a facility for delinquent juveniles where his various problems were allowed to fester. As a teenager, he stole some money from his parents' savings and fled the home, wandering around the country. His first arrest was for RAPE in 1973, when he was barely 17 years of age. At the time, believing the teenager was unlikely to relapse and do anything else, the court sentenced him to only 3 years. However, as we know, it's never 3 years. However, not long after his release, as you can imagine, Andrzej was brought to trial again, and this time it was for theft. He was given a suspended sentence. This guy was looking like he could be a career criminal, but nobody was taking it seriously. He was working as an ambulance driver, and I'm also a paramedic, just a little extra for you. He began raping young girls according to several Polish newspapers. Andrzej would often spot women picking strawberries by the road while driving, whereupon he would stop the ambulance, run into the field, drag the victims to the nearby bushes and then RAPE them. In one instance, it was alleged that Andrzej lured a victim by asking her for directions, but then ignored her response and asked her to lean into the car. He then closed the window on her neck, RAPINGing her while she was immobilised. At the time of his arrest and trial in 1980, he was charged with attempted murder. On that case, 25 counts of RAPE, that's 25 counts, robberies and escape from custody. The prosecutor, Waldemar Kowski, requested that the defendant be given the maximum penalty of 25 years imprisonment, expressing his concern that Andrzej's crimes would progressively worsen if he was released. Despite his request, Andrzej was sentenced to 15 years and later paroled in 1991 for good behaviour, but during this time he was a suspect in the disappearance of a 14-year-old Polish girl, Agnieszka, who mysteriously vanished after finishing her lessons at school. Now, despite a joint effort by local residents and the police to locate her, Ange was never found, leading some to believe that she had been abducted and killed. As part of the inquiry, Andrzej was questioned, but he was not charged in the case. Andrzej was arrested again in 1995 on charges of RAPING 2 girls. After remaining in custody for 2 years, he complained of an obstructed artery, which was confirmed during a medical examination. As a result, the courts issued that he could temporarily be released for treatment. However, Andrzej, who had sold his flat the previous year, used the money to buy himself a fake passport and flee to England. Using this fake passport, he found himself a job as a dry cleaner in London. Only a few months after this, he began stalking girls in that area, but he was never successful in actually raping them. After cross-checking his claims, his extensive record of RAPEs dating back to the 1970s was revealed to the public. And in March 2004, ANDRZEJ faced trial at the Old Bailey in London for the murder of Katerina Koneva. He was found guilty on all charges and he was swiftly sentenced to a whole life order, meaning he would never be eligible for parole. Following this conviction, several members of the prosecution and police force labelled him as one of the most dangerous and prolific sex offenders they had ever encountered. It's very unfortunate that when I do a search to find out if these bodies of Lola Shenkoya or Elizabeth Chow had ever been found, there's nothing to see. It's almost like they vanished into thin air. But one man does know where they are if he was the perpetrator of those crimes. But unfortunately, Andrzej Konowski is now dead after dying in HM Prison, Franklin, on the 23rd of September 2009 from heart failure. Shortly after his death, an appeal was made to the public to possibly connect him to any further RAPEs or murders in England. However, these people will never get their justice because Andrzej is now dead. He takes with him his secrets.